Okay. All right, hello everyone. I'm Anthony Bossler with the Paititi Institute, and I'm here with Andrew Jones today, one of our lead permaculture instructors. Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about yourself for those that don't know you?
Sure. Well, as you can probably hear from my accent, I was born in Australia and then grew up variously in different parts of Southeast Asia and the States, as well as Australia. And in my early 20s, I got a chance to do some traveling and kind of fell into aid and development work after a few years of doing a whole bunch of different things. And I had studied environmental science as my base degree. So over the years of doing that work, I kind of got a sense of how that business work, that industry really operated, and eventually got a little frustrated with the lack of sustainability that seemed to be embedded. So looked for options to go back. In the meantime, I had actually studied some postgraduate in environmental management and development studies, but eventually went back and studied permaculture. And that gave me a really nice overarching framework for hanging my knowledge that I had and identifying the gaps. And that really provided a strong base for all kinds of fun stuff that I get to do now, which includes some teaching, some consulting. I live in southern Baja on a farm which is permaculturally focused. We do natural building, grow a bunch of good food, have a bunch of interesting folks passing through. And so somehow I seem to be living a fairly creative and diverse life and connecting with good people and following some of my passions in ways that feel pretty fulfilling. So I feel really blessed to have kind of leaned into this path and made some choices in favor of the heart path, I guess we might say, because some of the things I did weren't always obvious in terms of building a quote-unquote career path. But in the end, it seems to have worked out okay.
Great, thank you. Now, I found there's many different definitions of permaculture, and I'm curious how you would define permaculture, and whether if someone's working with permaculture principles as opposed to other methods.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think because I've got a poor memory, the definition that often comes to mind is the really short one when people ask me to define permaculture. Of course, it's always contextual. I often find myself defining it according to my audience and where they're at and what they might be best able to receive. But a really short version that I do like is that permaculture is a design science. Okay, that's pretty short and sweet. So it's a holistic design science, and what we're really aiming to do is work with natural patterns and create agriculturally productive systems that have the diversity, stability, and resilience of natural ecosystems. So it's a way of observing with and working with the natural patterns around us in a way that benefits life in all its forms and allows us ultimately to live abundant and fulfilled lives with folks that hopefully feel the same way.
Sounds good to me. You mentioned that you're living in the Baja Peninsula. How's your experience been introducing permaculture principles to the local community there?
Yeah, we've been really slow. We've come in quietly. We've taken on 30 acres of land, which we bought in 3 pieces. And initially, we just took the cows off and stopped mowing the orchard area, which used to be bare earth, cleared twice a year, which in the dry tropics is not a great idea because you take away all the protection for the soil and everything that would potentially hold moisture through the really dry months. So it leads to more stress on the tree. So just by doing those two initial things, we noticed that the trees were less stressed and started to respond. And then over the years, we've put in a bunch of different water harvesting and other systems and used natural willing techniques, combining local techniques with less known techniques, perhaps introduce some different methodologies into the area. And we're at the point now, after nearly 10 years, where it feels like we're almost ready to start showing what we've done. In other words, it's been really important to keep our mouths closed and do the work, to the point where someone who walks in, who's got a sense of landscape, who's of the land and working on the land, might come in and go, hey, that's kind of interesting. Why does it look like this? And also we're at the point where the guys who've been working with us for many years have noticed themselves the benefits of some of these techniques, and they're the ones eventually who'll actually be talking about it, not me. The last thing we want is some gringo guy telling people why they're so clever and how their stuff's really cool. What we want is the local guys who see what's happened and can differentiate and understand the heritage of the area to be talking about it and explaining it to people of the region. And so I think we're getting kind of close to that. So it's a slow process, and I feel like organically it needs to evolve that way. And we really need to have a sense of culture and place and how to interact with that, because it's so easy, especially when we're first there, when we're so enthusiastic about what we're doing and we want to share and help and be useful, to kind of put our foot in our mouths, or even both feet in my case. So we've been pretty careful to take a softly approach and to kind of build up the models to a point where people can see them for themselves and experience how they are, and ultimately come and taste the mangoes. And if that doesn't convince you, we probably can't help you.
Learning through experience. I love it. You mentioned you get the opportunity to teach design courses, and I was curious, what are some reasons that you think somebody would take a permaculture design course?
Yeah, it's such a multi-faceted course. It's very information dense, and it gives us tools and a perspective that can be applied on a practical, physical plane. And it gives us an ability to literally start to think about resources and the different types of resources that are in our lives that we need, both visible and invisible, and start to build out from a base of really solid knowledge to create the kind of life and balance that we might see. So for me, the reason that I would say to anyone who's thinking about a permaculture course is because it can fundamentally influence the choices you make and the quality of your life for yourself and your family and people that you care about, and an ability to really be a positive influencer around you in so many different ways. And it's also for someone who's curious, like we are, it provides a path of lifelong study, because essentially we're embarking on a journey of lifelong learning that never finishes. And so it'll open up avenues that maybe we haven't been fully aware of, and will give us even more stuff to be interested in. So boredom becomes an impossibility. There'll never be anything, or there'll never be nothing to do. So if you're feeling curious, if you're feeling like you'd really like to be a positive influence and really be of service to yourself and others, and really get a nice framework for thinking about how to live well and how to promote that idea in your own life and then lead by example, I think it's a really empowering way of embarking on that road or continuing our journey. We've all got knowledge, and it's really about reminding ourselves of what we know at some level. and reconnecting with heritage knowledge that's been expressed in so many different ways by different cultures and different different people through time.
Wonderful. Can you speak just real quick, maybe to a few examples of specifics of the knowledge that people can expect to walk away with within like a PDC?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the PDC is broken up to some very specific areas. So we kind of begin with a broad frame of reference and talk about, what is kind of sustainability? Where are we collectively on our human journey? What are some of the overall issues and challenges that we're facing and the opportunities? And then we look at how permaculture, which is really a connecting science, this holistic science, how it knits back these areas of knowledge. Firstly, by looking at how do we design, in what's a process that we might use to start designing and thinking about design? What are some of the methods and techniques and strategies for approaching a design process? And once we have a sense of that process, we then start to dig into some specific areas. So, we look at water, we look at soils, we look at water harvesting, we look at trees, we look at climate and weather, we look at specific subclimate groupings so that we know where we are on the planet and how we can operate. We look at invisible structures. So we dig into more detail in all these specific areas, which gives people a useful broad overview. And at the same time as we're doing that, particularly on this course, we're also looking at the inner landscape and doing some of our own work collectively and individually that's helping us to feel more connected, to break down some of our kind of socially conditioned misconceptions that might be other than allowing us to embrace the knowledge and embrace the wisdom that nature's shouting at us, encouraging us to understand. And so all these things working together provides a really powerful platform for us to break out of our kind of preconceived patterns and start to see with fresh eyes and put on a pair of, if you like, a sort of a permaculture lens. And once we've adopted that lens for a little while and start to see the natural patterns flowing, which is one of the other key areas that we look at, once we start to uncover those natural patterns and remember how to see them, for myself at least, it's been a process that's been impossible to reverse. Once I started to see how those energy flows were being expressed through water, through the energetics and different aspects, I started to understand how some of our human systems were so disruptive and dysfunctional, and how nature was able to express in ways that were so elegant and efficient. And once that kind of happens, it's hard to repack in the box. So essentially you start to change the way you see the world and the way you feel you want to interact with it, with the world, with other people, and what your potential might be to influence that in different ways. And the sum total of all of those things for many, many people, I would say 98% of people come out of that process in a course feeling empowered, feeling excited, feeling that there are new opportunities, and feeling hopeful about the future. Even though we acknowledge that there are so many challenges and so many things going on, it helps us to really see what we can be doing internally in our own journey and work that we need to do, but also collectively and reaching out. And so overall, it's a really, it's a beautiful journey. It's a challenging journey. It requires us to be willing to confront ourselves and some of our cultural baggage that we've all been provided with. And through that process, it helps us to wake up in ways that are refreshing. think that's how I would summarize it.
I think that's a pretty good summary. Um, a few things on location I was curious to ask you about. Would you have any advice for people about choosing the right place to do a PDC?
Yeah, there's kind of the right brain and left brain approach, or the intuitive and the very practical approach. Some people feel that they want to take a PDC in a similar climate zone to that in which they're going to be spending more time, or they're planning to live in, or they already live in. And other people might choose it based on feeling drawn to the energy of the group that's putting on the course, and the ethics and the intention that they hold around the quality of that experience they wish to provide. And both of those are legitimate approaches. What I would say is that every PDC will teach you about all the climate zones and design approaches and strategies that are appropriate for those specific climate zones. So it is designed to empower us as humans to be able to adapt to different parts of the world in which we find ourselves. And so in that sense, it's that holistic approach. And so it's not necessary to take the course in your specific climate zone. You will be gaining that information. However, yeah. So that's the answer I would give.
Great.
I guess I would finish by saying I would follow my intuition. I would encourage people to follow their intuition. If you see a course and it just kind of grabs you, for whatever reason, it gives you that sense of a little bit of excitement and curiosity. Like, oh, that looks pretty cool. Go with that. Because at the end of the day, half of the purpose of the course is about helping us to find and experience that sense of excitement and wonder about the world around us again. That we can get separated from and get lost, and we get lost in our heads and all of that stuff. So part of it is this journey of rediscovery and rediscovering that childlike state of wonder and engagement about the world around us and this really cool stuff that's everywhere. And so I think that if anywhere it inspires you with that sense of a spark, then take notice of that.
Words of wisdom. Do you think there's any advantages about taking a PDC at La Rapata, Paititi's home base here in the Peruvian Andes?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. One of the amazing things, of which there are many about La Rapata, is that it goes from elevation that's subtropical through a temperate zone and then into high alpine. And so we get to experience different climate zones and see some of the patterns and characteristics and play in those climate zones and feel how they're different and understand the kinds of different opportunities they provide. It also allows us to experience and feel how the appropriate techniques for building and living in those places vary. So it has a very rich and unique opportunity to experience different climates in one location, which is not very easy to find. And also, we have a benefit of having this amazingly deep local history of land management practices that are very evident from some pretty capable designers who preceded us there. And so the Inca and the pre-Inca folks who've inhabited that area for so long have left us all kinds of clues and evidence of what they found to be really effective for living and working in those zones, managing water, managing the resources. And so, both the climatic diversity, the history, and the rich local knowledge that can still be felt there. And at another level, just the presence of those mountains. I mean, it's a very powerful place to spend time in. It helps to remind us of our humanity and also, our significance and our insignificance, in a sense. The landscape is so powerful and vast, and yet it holds us. And so, yeah, it's a very magical and powerful area. It's one that I don't think anyone could spend time in without being affected. Even if you didn't speak to anyone or study anything while you were there, you would be deeply influenced by the experience. And so on that level, all kinds of lessons and values and benefits to be enjoyed.
Great. So, Andrew, I've heard you say before that permaculture is a revolution in disguise. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, a lot of people associate permaculture with gardening, and Bill joked about that. As you said, that he was often referenced under gardening when he might have been referenced under revolution, and that really goes back to the fundamental nature of the questions that we ask in the course and this holistic approach. So we really unpack questions about what does it look like to live lightly on the planet? What are the values that we need to hold in order to do that? What are some of the different forms of capital how do we think about these resources that are around us? And so we can go as deep as we like down the rabbit hole, in a sense, to really unpack that and arrive at some, with a sense of clarity in terms of looking to nature and giving ourselves some useful frameworks to hang our knowledge in. And frameworks are useful just for kind of giving us different lenses for looking at the world. So how do we think about capital and the different forms of value, the cultural capital and experiential capital and, finance capital and all these, what's the role of these things and how might we be overemphasizing one versus another, etc. So permaculture is definitely more than just about gardening. It's really about how we link all our systems together. It's about how we link our social systems and how we think about being democratic in our relationships, how we take responsibility, and we get to really ask some pretty fundamental questions and think about that stuff for ourselves and come to some conclusions that can be pretty useful and potentially might influence the way that we take some decisions in the future, give us a nice solid grounding in ethics and the values that will allow us to be more human and more effective in nurturing Mother Earth, nurturing ourselves, nurturing the people around us. All of those valuable things.
Great. Well, thank you for taking some of your time, Andrew, and sharing these things with us today. I have one final question, and I found in myself and with many others, there's a favorite plant or something that everyone tries to incorporate into a design. Do you have a particular plant or fruit or vegetable or something that you try to incorporate into designs when you can, when possible?
That's an interesting question. I'm actually just here in Arizona at the moment. Been doing some design work in Boynton Canyon, which is a pretty special area, as you know. I would say for myself, I'm a fruit bat, so I'm kind of a sucker for fruits. And mulberries, I got to say, they're very, very adaptive. There's a pretty good variety of different ones that can fit into just about any climate zone. And I do love my mulberries. So yeah, I find myself going to mulberries pretty regularly. And there are so many others as well. yeah, it's amazing once we get into the detail. I heard someone mention recently that there were 3 million useful plants that, medicinal, fiber, food. So, 3 million is a lot to choose from. And it reminds me that I've just scratched the surface in terms of the ones I'm even vaguely aware of. Yeah, so what an amazing opportunity to keep expanding our knowledge and to keep testing fruits and herbs and vegetables and figuring out what's edible and what's good.
I believe that was a very good answer, Andrew. Thank you for thank you for taking some time and sharing some of your knowledge, wisdom, and experience with us. And looking forward to seeing you down here at Larapata.
Okay, brother. Thank you too. Great to see you looking well, and look forward to catching up in person soon with you guys all. And yeah, the good folks that come and join us. So yeah, welcome to all. Come and we'll have some co-creative fun together for a month. It'll be a blast.
Sounds like a great time.